Welcome back.
The snapping got me into a groove, so don't let me stop you.
Hi, guys. As you know, I'm Brandice.
And I'm Jo'Van.
You're watching
Closing the Gap. Thank you all for joining us today.
Yes. And
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah.
I forget that sometimes, but just a reminder. As you're watching, you're like, these two cats are cool. Just go ahead and like and subscribe.
Today we have a very special topic.
What are we talking about?
Very tough topic, too. How to deal with toxic parents.
Listen.
As a Christian.
You always have to, yes.
As a Christian. Because as a secular person, you can just be like, say whatever and do whatever you want and just be like, whatever. It means nothing, you know what I'm saying? But as a Christian.
And then that part is your parents, too, because it's like toxic people in general. You're like, oh, you don't have to interact with them, distance, whatever. Goodbye. I don't deal with toxic people. But these are your parents, the people who gave you life, who did so much, sacrificed so much for you.
Right.
But they're toxic.
They're toxic.
So, first, let's...
Real quick thing I have to ask. Are we going to talk about from the perspective of someone that lives at home or someone that's an adult and doesn't live at home dealing with toxic parents?
Oh, that's a good... See, when I was doing this, of course, I mean, you only put in your own perspective, so I was thinking of as an adult living on your own.
So let's talk about that specifically, because as a kid, I feel like it's way harder, because you can't go anywhere. You know
it's like, oh, you're so toxic, I'm going to my room.
Yeah, it's just like...
So, I mean, we can, I guess, maybe get a point or two for those younger people. But to define what toxic parents are, and I believe, yes, I got all of my information from Psychology Today, so it's not just some random things I found. This is actually research, and so just want to put that out there so people are like, I don't know about that. Well, it was research from Psychology Today. So
she said what she said.
I said what I said. A toxic person is anyone whose behavior adds negativity and upset to your life. Many times, people who are toxic are dealing with their own stresses and traumas. To this, they act in ways that don't present them in the best light and usually upset others around them. So, a lot of times, when we think about toxic people, that one line that stuck to me, because it's like they're dealing with their own stresses and trauma. And I actually was talking to a good friend before the show, and because he was just asking, "What are you talking about today?" And I told him, and I said, the thing is, I think a lot of times, though, I want to put this clear. A lot of times we define people and parents as toxic for small things that's not necessarily they're not toxic. They just don't do things that you agree with. So I don't want to throw around toxic too much. But you also want to give a grace too, because they're only dealing with the things that they know that was passed on from their parents, from their parents' parents.
Right.
So, like this definition says, they're dealing with their own stresses and traumas.
Right.
So that's what you have to understand when you're just dealing with toxic people, whether it's your parents or people in general, but especially when it comes to your parents, because a random person you can like write off, but your parents, you definitely want to give grace, extend that grace, and like try to get that understanding why they are the way they are, and like get the understanding. And sometimes it's just learned behavior, and that's it. And it's not because they're not trying or whatever. That's just bottom line.
And I just do real quick, because I think you're killing it on the fact that you need to give that grace to your parents, especially not only because they're your parents, but understanding what makes them toxic. You need to understand that, because those very same things could be making you toxic. You know what I'm saying? If it's been passed down for generations, you're part of that generation. So you need to give them grace so you can sit there and understand.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some things to look out for to define them as toxic. Just because they do a certain thing, certain way that you don't agree, that's not being toxic or whatever the case may be. But highly negative reaction. Toxic parents are emotionally out of control. They tend to dramatize even minor issues and see any possible slight as a reason to become hostile, angry, or verbally abusive. So it's kind of extreme things, obviously. So lack of empathy, um, extremely controlling. Not just I want to know who you're texting, all that. Where are you going? Extremely controlling. They want to control everything and everyone in their vicinity. That kind of control. So that's why I wanted to define this so that people won't just throw out that toxic term just for everything. So these are very extreme reasons why somebody would technically be toxic, and then highly critical. So they're criticizing everything. You can't do anything right. Everything you do, they criticize. So those are four points that define a toxic parent. So if and I they're going deeper into it, but of course we're on a time crunch. You don't want to be here all day, so I will definitely put this in our stories for you to understand, like get a more detail of what signs to look out for if you are dealing with a toxic parent. Because sometimes also you just think, oh, well, this is how it is, and not even know that your parents are toxic. So these are signs, and not just whatever. Because everybody has some things that you just don't like about your parents, or whatever the case may be, but it doesn't make them toxic. So I just want to put that out there.
Right. And I think one of the things we as Christians, it might be hard for some of us to get over the scripture that tells us to honor our parents. So then it's like, okay, how do we honor our parents but also protect ourselves? So the Bible, Ephesians 4, also tells parents not to irritate and aggravate their children.
Yeah.
So I love that the Bible doesn't just throw like children out there to be, to fend for themselves. There's nothing to check the parents.
Exactly.
The Bible does say parents should not be aggravating and irritating their children.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I did want to talk about some of the ways to approach your toxic parents. The first thing I would say is determine if a relationship is possible, because you can honor your parents with love, but you also
and
with
respect.
anybody.
Just want to still respect them, but yeah.
Yes, but with anybody, no one is above boundaries, and you have to have boundaries. You can't help your parents if you're in a bad place. You know what I'm saying? You will probably love your parents, so you have to make sure you're in the good mental, emotional space, and if that means setting boundaries, you need to do that. So, and if they don't respect your boundaries, you have to determine, is that relationship possible? You can honor them from a distance, but you may not be able to let them in fully.
And just really quick on that, and I'll let you continue. Boundaries is important for every type of relationship, not just toxic, whatever. Boundaries are very important to make yourself just okay. Just like you don't ever want to you just always set boundaries with everybody, not just toxic people. So I just want to put that out.
I think we did an episode on that.
We did.
Oh, okay. Do not let their words define who you are. Think about it like this. If you're dealing with toxic parents, they're probably saying all this stuff that's totally out of bounds, totally not true, and it's just coming from their toxic place. Whether they're, have substance abuse or they just have emotional turmoil going on within, they're going to be saying all sorts of stuff, just spewing that pain and the thing that they're going through onto you. So try to be aware of where they're coming from. Are they coming from a good place where they're trying to love, or are they coming from a bad place where they're spreading that hurt? And understand that those words do not define who you are. And I know that's tough with parents because they have a large amount of influence on you, and what they say means a lot. So you got to be very mindful of that. And forgive them. That's another thing. It's hard to heal and move with toxic parents when you're holding a grudge against them. It's very easy to hold that grudge, but remember, forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. It releases you from that stress, and the more you forgive and still set boundaries,
yes,
because you got to do both, but the more you forgive, the more you are releasing your spirit to be able to actually help them and not be burdened by all the negative things that they've done to you.
Definitely. You definitely want to set those boundaries. And also two more things that I love that you pointed out, forgiveness, because that is a key. Because a lot of times we forget about you have to forgive, extend grace, and just be understanding, open-minded. But also when you're thinking about how to interact or deal with control the location. So, Matt, you have to do all your interactions in a public place, and not because if they're very abusive or whatever, you don't want to put yourself in a position where it will cause harm or hurt. And also be kind to yourself. You have to allow yourself that grace and understanding. Like sometimes you feel bad, like, well, this is my mom, this is my dad. I feel bad for wanting to set that boundary,
Right.
but you have to be understand that that's okay. Still have to respect and honor them, but it's okay to set that boundary and know that I can't just like give all or be whatever, because that's not healthy for you, and you're depleted and just always giving to them or trying to meet their needs or whatever. Then you're just not going to be any good for yourself. So just be kind to yourself and understand that that's not your job, is to always be, and for anybody, always be that person for somebody else. That's God's place to fill them up and to fill them up. So that's not your job. So you just have to be kind to yourself and forgive. Thank you for saying that.
Thank y'all for watching. Let us know in the comments do you have any tips for dealing with toxic parents? If you do, let us know. Once again, please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week.
Bye.